Alright folks, today I'm here once again to bring you my thoughts on The Walking Dead Dead City Season 2 Episode 4, Feisty Friendly. Now, there was quite a bit I enjoyed this episode, but I'd have to admit this was probably my least favorite so far this season. That's not to say it was bad by any means, but I guess I just find the internal politics of these Islander factions a little less interesting than the war for methane itself. Although, I will acknowledge it is extremely important to flesh them out to make the story more cohesive. With that being said, I think Dead City has absolutely excelled in making its new-coming characters genuinely interesting, especially compared to some in Daryl Dixon. When we first met Bugal in episode 1, he seemed like a quiet, clever, and calculated individual. And although he still remains clever and calculated, he was not quiet at all this episode, and his more eccentric personality kind of surprised me. But I thought it absolutely worked and made for a far more interesting character. The whole idea this episode is for Negan, the Dama, and Croat to finalize a deal for Bugal's forces to join their cause in defending Manhattan. And through this plot point, we see just how slimy Bugal can be as we learn he is a man who has gained his post-apocalyptic power through betting, mostly on walker fights, which I was totally right about them using the guts of the living to entice them to attack each other, although I'm pretty sure it was ground up rat, not human. The highlighting of art this season has been really interesting as well. Hershel sees the city as a canvas to create something beautiful, while Bugal hoards the art of the old world and sees the past through the lens of their own situation, an island versus a federation of colonies. I'm not sure how exactly these themes will all come together, but there's too many instances of the city and its survivors being compared to art pieces for it not to be a running motif for something in the future. And although Bugal stole the show this episode, I always have to give praise to the Croat as he is just always written on point. I love that scene where Bugal and his men are making fun of his accent and he's just sitting there biting his tongue. It's so crazy how a charismatic actor can make you feel bad for them being made fun of when their character is an absolute murderous psychopath. Power equals power has been this season's theme, and Bugal absolutely knows this as while having dinner, he attempts to gain the upper hand by proposing the construction of a second methane production facility right there in his art museum in exchange for their allegiance, which the Croat strongly opposes, seeing him for the con man he is and accuses Bugal of cheating in the fights by injecting the walkers with enhancing drugs to win. You see, Bugal has remained in power by always betting on his champion Walker, a big behemoth who has won every match it's been put into, so wanting to outsmart him and beat him at his own game, Negan proposes a bet. If Bugal wins, they'll make the second methane production facility, but if they win, their forces join with no strings attached. The rules are, you can put whatever armor or weaponry you want on your fighter, but once the match begins, no physical contact is permitted. And leaning further into playing Bugal's game, Negan douses the walker in oil in an attempt to make it too slippery. But once that didn't work, Negan would jump in to bait the champion himself into opening itself up for the kill. But at the last second, Negan would watch intently as the champion had quickly 180'd as if knowing of its impending doom and killed the challenging walker. And although the spoils of victory were clear, Bugal chooses to join Negan and the Dama with no strings attached anyway after Negan mysteriously whispers something in his ear. That being the truth that he knows this champion wasn't a walker at all. He was a living man once allied with Bugal who now found himself his prisoner. But now that his cover is blown, Bugal no longer has a use for him and kills him right on the spot. This was actually a really crazy reveal for a rather mediocre set piece, which I absolutely loved and really liked how it was teased in the opening scene. It directly showed us no matter what Bugal says, he is using you and will betray you the second you lose your value. But with Negan's knowledge of his secret, the ball has now bounced into their court as Bugal will have to continue to play fair if he wants to keep his power. Now, that about does it for the Barazi side of the episode. There were a couple smaller reveals, like the Dama always being crazy and biting someone she disagreed with publicly in the old world, but besides that, this outing was all about getting to know Bugal. As for Maggie's side of the episode, there definitely wasn't nearly as much to talk about, but I did find some things interesting. In episode 2, I was very vocal about my displeasure with the confusing direction they were taking Pearlie's characterization, but since then he's kind of dropped the whole only looking out for himself thing and has begun to see where Maggie's coming from, which has allowed the two to get closer and understand each other better as he's informed of their history with Negan. After the incident with Hershel and Negan last episode, Pearlie believes their best shot at finding the methane is to locate Negan and get the information out of him, which again is kind of a stupid plot point as a few methane barrels won't save them in the long run. Instead, they should be seeking to abduct the Croat and learn his ways of producing it. But it at least sets Hershel, Pearlie, and Maggie out on a solo mission to get the information they need, where along the way we get some very humanizing moments between Pearlie and Maggie as they reminisce on their old lives before the outbreak. And again, extra emphasis is put on Hershel's lack of knowledge or appreciation for the old world, which helps to reinforce his love for the city's ruins. Pearlie's line about trying so hard to bring something back that the kids of today don't even know brought this theme home and really speaks to the whole making something new out of the destruction idea that Hershel's been following, which I think was also the idea behind the lightning bug story. Maggie took what Pearlie said to heart and wondered if Hershel actually remembered it himself or just remembered it through the stories she's told. But he surprises her by adding an extra layer to the story she wasn't even aware of, which I think makes her see Hershel does have his own view of the world separate from what she's told him. However, as Maggie locates Negan and comes face to face with him for the first time this season, she learns of his motivations in protecting his family, which I think really helped to diffuse some of their tension. And because of this mutual respect for protecting the people they love, Negan reveals the location of the methane supply against his better judgment. But what really stops Maggie in her tracks is Negan's revelation that the Dama has gotten to Hershel and has been influencing him to help them, which we already knew, but throws Maggie into a spiral as he tells her not to trust her own son. A statement she would typically ignore from a man like him, but rings some sense given the evidence she's put together so far, only further enforced when Hershel is suspiciously the last to regroup at the rendezvous point, which he claims was simply a result of having troubles getting out, but we know was really a cover to sneak off and see the Dama, who appears alone in a room waiting for him, but strangely claims it's a surprise to see him. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kinda lost where this is going. I'm still standing by my claim of Hershel playing both sides while primarily intending to protect his mom, but man, that's getting hard to defend the more we see of his suspicious actions. There's no way he would put his mom in harm's way simply to join the Dama in building the city. But at the same time, what else would he be doing sneaking around and lying to her about where he went? We know she had Hershel manipulate something at the bricks in between seasons, so I'm assuming his meeting with her was to give her updates, but they're keeping his motives pretty close to their chest, so for me, Hershel is a bit of a wild card right now. I feel as if the show is following the formula of having a big twist at the end that changes the context of the season so far, kind of like how they revealed Maggie was in Manhattan to trade Negan last season. But what that twist is, I'm not entirely sure yet. All I hope is that it isn't as generic as Hershel is bad or a spy for the Dama. I have faith they'll come up with something stronger than that, but who knows? It's the Walking Dead universe. Lastly, I wanted to mention the scene with Ginny where it's revealed she has come back to kill Negan, which wasn't really surprising at all. For the life of me, I can't figure out the point of her character this season. She obviously isn't gonna kill Negan, and she doesn't really have anything else going for her. So if I were to guess, I'd maybe say she's meant to act as a foil to Hershel, as he doesn't really care about killing Negan. But to be honest, I don't really know, so you guys will have to let me know what you think. But those were pretty much my thoughts on Dead City Season 2, Episode 4. A good world-building episode for the Islander side of the story, but a bit of a slower one compared to the last three. If I were to rate this installment, I think I'd probably give it a 6.5 out of 10 in relation to the rest of the season. I'm really excited to see where Bugal's character goes, and Hershel's motives are by far the most interesting aspect of this season. But that's gonna do it for me today, folks. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this episode in the comments down below, and I'll see you all in the next video.